All right. So thank you everyone for being here today. We are sort of in the midst of a very exciting, maybe scary moment where we have actually seen some draft maps. So that's why we're here today. Bree, you're supposed to like follow up.
I'm letting people in. I'm letting people in. People are still joining. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you all so much for being here. Everyone can hear me. Okay. Is that still the case? Because I sound weird to myself. Okay.
We hear you.
So I think I'm named. Oh, I'm back to being me. Good. Okay. So thank you all again for being here. As Leica said, we have seen draft maps. We're going to be going over them. Thank you, Susan. We're going to be going over them in this meeting. Leica, why don't we go ahead and go to the next slide, because we still got folks coming in. And this will help me stay on track. So the meeting that we're going to have today, we have a lot to cover. I want to say up front that this might go a little longer than the hour that we normally have for this time together. We totally understand if people can't stay the whole time. We're going to try to be efficient, but we do want to make sure that we cover all the things that we need to talk about, because we are going to get one shot to comment on these draft maps that have just been released. We also have the hearing schedule. It's Monday and Tuesday of next week. It looks like there are going to be hearings in Raleigh, as well as in some remote locations, which we will talk about a little bit later, as well as virtual options. We don't know how that's going to work yet, though, but we'll be sharing that information out as soon as we have it. So we're going to move through this agenda. We are going to also have some time to really dig into the draft maps, which I'm guessing is what most of y'all are really excited about, is looking at those maps. And we're going to even break into some regional breakouts to look at those with other folks who are in your area. So on that note, let's go to the next slide. Like as always, want to, it's so great to see all these people coming in. Thank you all so much for being here and spending this day with us, this hour with us. So for folks who might be new, all on the line, we are a 501c4 campaign, and our goal is to bring people who care about a range of issues together to get fair maps in North Carolina and in our other states across the country this year. So let's go on to the next slide, Leica. Please, if you haven't already, or even if you have already, because a bunch of new people have come in and we want to know where people are, who's here, who's in the space with us. Please put in the chat your name, where you're joining from, and if you have any organizational affiliations that you want to lift up, put those in the chat as well. And also, as Leica mentioned, but some people have joined since, we are streaming this live on Facebook. We do that because so that this can be seen and shared with anyone who maybe couldn't be here in the moment. It will also, there will be a recording that will be sent out to everybody who registered. We want people to get this information. It's really important. You can type your questions if you have questions in the chat. Leica's going to do most of the talking as we're walking through kind of the maps and the looking at the maps and our analysis of the maps. And I will be watching the chat, so feel free to put a question in the chat. And then we'll also have some time at the end. We'll stay on and share, and we'll answer questions. We want to make sure that folks get their questions answered. So nice to see so many people here. I see so many names I know and a bunch of names I don't know, and that's all awesome. Okay, next slide, Leica. Right. As we're kind of going back to this, we used to do this a lot in our meetings and we kind of got away from it, but I want to go back and ask y'all to we're going to do a quick poll. We just want to know, have a sense of where folks are joining from today. Like I said, we're going to break out a little bit later into breakout rooms by region so that we can look at the maps with other folks and start analyzing them and looking for the issues that there might be given depending on the region. So I just wanted to get a sense. It looks like we've got about 73% of y'all have answered the poll. If everybody can try to do that, that would be super helpful for knowing how to do those breakouts most effectively, I would say. Anybody have an answer? Looks like we got lot of folks from the Triangle. That's awesome. A lot of folks from the mountains, the Piedmont Triad. We've got folks from every region on this call, which is amazing. All right. Thank you all so much for doing that. We're so getting up there. Anybody hasn't had a chance to answer the poll, please answer. Let us know where you're joining from. Okay.
Oh,
That's great. I'm just gonna take a look at it in case I can't see it easily later. Okay. Okay, so seeing the results there, or maybe you're not. Let me see if I share them with you. Now you're seeing the results of who's here. Yeah. And that's awesome. So thank you all for being here again. If you haven't already, please introduce yourself in the chat. And we will go on to the next slide. All right.
So we are going to talk through a little bit about what the process has been like so far, what's happened to lead us to the place where we are right now, and maybe just give you a little bit of an idea of, some of the things that have come out of the hearings and stuff like that. Right. So when we were going, so Bree and I attended pretty much all of the hearings. One of us was at all of the pre-map hearings that happened in the month of September. So we were there for all that month. We drove all over the state. And there were a lot of common themes among people who went to the hearings. A lot of people asked for more hearings. A lot of those locations were not particularly accessible, not accessible by public transport. A lot of the hearing times were in the middle of the afternoon when most people are working. And so, people asked for more and more accessible hearings, particularly after draft maps. We are going to be getting some post-draft maps hearings. They're going to be Monday and Tuesday. I know that's really soon and not a lot of time to prepare. And we'll talk a little bit more about what the actual schedule is and what's going to happen there.
Also want to say a huge thank you to people a lot of y'all who are on this call wrote letters to the editor, emailed the redistricting committee, and made phone calls, all kinds of things to demand more hearings. And y'all, we got more hearings. I mean, we thought there was going to be one hearing in Raleigh, and while we are not satisfied with the hearing schedule, that we need way more, notice, and there should be way more hearings, but we have a lot more opportunity to give feedback than we thought we were going to have. So thank you so much for doing that work.
Yeah, this happened because of you all, because of you all and the way you're holding legislators accountable. We got, if people had not done that, we would not be having these remote sites or anything like that. Again, like Bree said, I don't think we're happy with the way that the hearings are scheduled, but the fact that we're getting so many is because of what you all have done in holding people accountable. So another thing, people asked for fairness and transparency. They asked for an end to gerrymandering. That was, not surprising. People in North Carolina are sick and tired of gerrymandering. People asked for particular things for their areas. So one big thing that came out is that we had a lot of people in the Sandhills area ask for a Sandhills space district, centered around like Cumberland County and like Moore County and Robeson. A lot of people asked for that. So that was pretty notable. Other areas like people in the Triad asked for the 3 cities of the Triad to be kept together. And so we got some really good feedback about what people want to see in the maps. And then a lot of people also just asked for not for their county or their city or their precincts not to be split. I think also a lot of people asked for universities not to be split. So, people really, really wanted their communities kept together. So the map drawing that's been going on, so just to give you some sense is that, we've been told that this map drawing is the most transparent ever in North Carolina history. I think that's a pretty low bar, but it is true. It is a true statement that this is the most transparent that map drawing has been in North Carolina. The bar is in the basement though. So anyway, what we've been having is basically there are a number of mapping terminals in the state legislature that legislators can use to draw. There are public terminals, but no maps that were drawn on the public terminals can be considered by the committee. So they were sort of pointless, and that doesn't seem like they're really soliciting public input. But there were all these terminals. They live streamed from the terminals all day. You could watch them when legislators came in. There was one of the things that we had asked for was audio from the terminals so we could hear what legislators were saying when they were making these decisions. We did get that. Another thing that was asked for was some way to identify who was using a particular terminal. You can't just find out by looking at the stream of the room. The people are really far away. Some of them aren't even in the picture, but we did not get that. And so there was, I've been following this really closely, and there was a lot of me trying to listen to someone's voice and see if I recognized it, trying to look at someone blurry and far away. I'm like, can I tell who that is? The thing that was helpful in that is that most of the drawing we've seen being done has been done by the chairs of the committee. The Republican chairs of the committee have done the vast majority of the drawing, at least up until recently. So about the first 2 weeks of drawing, it was pretty much only the Republican chairs doing the map drawing. And so, unfortunately for all this transparency, something that I said to a reporter was that we have all of this transparency, and yet we're getting a result that does not take into account public input, that still has a partisan bias. So basically we got a lot of transparency and a really similar outcome as when they were doing stuff in back rooms. So what is next? We are having hearings on these draft maps that we're going to talk about today. The hearings are Monday and Tuesday. So on both Monday and Tuesday, you will be able to go to Raleigh at 3 p.m. in person to testify if you wish. And then on Monday, there will be a remote location in Wilmington and a remote location in Caldwell. We don't have details on where those are. I think that the schedules say that they are at local community colleges, and I think the Wilmington one says it's at UNCW. We don't have a specific room or address or anything like that at this point that I know of. We had a lot of problems with this during the previous hearings. We had a lot of last minute room changes. We had a lot of the actual location was 10 minutes down the road from where it said. So keep that in mind. And then on Tuesday, if you would like to testify in person, there's our remote locations in Greenville and Charlotte. And so basically what my understanding is for those remote locations is that there will be legislative staff there, and they will be live streaming that location into the committee room where other people are also going to be testifying in person. They've done this in the past. They did this in 2017. It can be kind of funky. We had technical difficulties earlier in this call. They're not above having technical difficulties, so we'll see how that goes. But if you do live in those areas, there is the option to go in person. And then we also are hearing that there will be a virtual testimony option. At 5:30 p.m. on Monday and Tuesday, they will have a virtual hearing that you can testify at virtually. I think that this is really great. This is something that us and other partners have advocated for, because whether or not they choose to acknowledge it, we are still in the midst of a pandemic. A lot of people don't feel safe being in a large group inside like that. And so there will be these virtual options. I am not sure how they will work. I assume they will use some kind of video conferencing software, similar to Zoom. And then we expect the committee to start voting on maps by later next week. So that is when those decisions are going to be made, and we will be alerting you to, any kind of accountability or advocacy actions you can take around those votes. So if you're here, you should be on our email list, and you will get notified when we have a rapid action in response to a map coming up for a vote.
There's a couple questions that I want to go ahead and address if we can. Number one, just to clarify for folks, because this is the first time that y'all might be hearing this since, we just got this information like yesterday and today. But so there are in-person hearings in Raleigh, which we expected that there would be one. It looks like it's going to be both Monday and Tuesday in Raleigh, and then there will be remote locations in Greenville, Wilmington and Caldwell on Monday, and Greenville and Charlotte on Tuesday for that in-person hearing. And then there will also be a virtual hearing both days. The questions that came up, number one, this was a direct message to me, but I'd like to address it because I think other people might question this. And Leica, tell me if my answer is not right, but the question is, if you testify in person, can you use the time to get someone's opinion on the record or to get the committee chairs to answer you? And the answer is no. They are not going to respond to you. This is just your opportunity to say what you think about the maps. And it's really important to do that because whatever you say becomes part of the public record. So we really just even strategically want to use this time to get our opinions on the maps, our feedback on the maps into the public record. And they won't answer you. They're not going to respond to you if you ask the question or anything like that. And then another question is, how stable or likely are the maps that have been released since they haven't been voted on in committee? Like, are the maps that we've seen? I think the question is, are the maps that we've seen the maps that will be voted on? And what would you say to that?
Yeah. Well, first thing I'm going to say is that this is North Carolina. So like, I assume that at least the initial forms of the bills, the map bills, so basically these maps have to be put in bill form. They like do that by like breaking them down by census block. It's like you end up with a bill that's like pages and pages of long strings of numbers. But I expect that we will at least probably see something like that reflects these maps. However, they have been known to make last minute changes. This happened to us in 2019, where basically a map was changed when it was brought to the floor for a vote. And so, I cannot say for sure that these maps will be exactly the same. I think that one thing that we're going to talk about is that there are very many common themes among these maps. And I think that those common themes are likely to hold through all the maps. And so, if you were thinking about the maps in that way, I think your comment will continue to be relevant because all the maps we've seen have some common characteristics. But we could see some smaller changes. I think it's more likely if we see changes, they're smaller changes of particular lines or something like that for a particular area, not like a completely new map. And we also, just to say, I know no one has asked this yet, but we don't know which of these maps, there are multiple maps and we don't know which of these maps is actually the one that, the committee chairs really want. Like, we don't know, maybe they genuinely think all three of them are great. Maybe they don't. We really don't know. So what we're going to talk about today is framed around the common themes that are present in all the maps. And so if you want to keep that in mind as you're thinking about your comment, then your comment will, I think is most likely that your comment will continue to be relevant, whatever they do.
Another question is, will it help for people to show up at the committee meetings and for the full chamber vote?
Yeah, I think it always helps to show up at the committee meetings. I think that if you, having a sense of that pressure from community members in the room, it does. Legislators can say some wild things, and maybe with you in the room that they might, you might catch it, or you might keep them from doing something quite as nuts. It's always good to be there and sort of show them that people have a public presence if you are able to come. And also, if you come, you'll get to hang out with us because I will definitely be there. Bree will probably be there as well.
I think we should probably keep moving along, but I want to also say at the top here, or sort of still kind of close to the top, that we are having another event like this. This meeting was previously planned, and we have since planned another training, public comment training for Sunday. So if your question doesn't get answered here, or we are going to invite everyone who's here to come back, we hope you will come back because we will be looking at even more of the maps at that time as well. But I just want to let people know that, and I'll keep answering questions in the chat.
Yeah, so relevant to that is sort of the discussion about which maps we have. There have been 5 congressional maps that have been formally sort of submitted to the legislative system. 3 have been drawn by those Republican committee chairs, or 2 that have been drawn by a Democrat, so 5 congressional maps total. We are going to focus on the maps that are drawn by those committee chairs because they're the committee chairs, and therefore those are the maps that are most likely to make it through the committee and the most relevant to be commenting on. We've also seen 1 state Senate map also drawn by a Republican committee chair. We've just gotten that, and we've had a lot more time to look at the congressional maps as they've been developing. So what we were planning to do is on Sunday, we will talk about the state Senate map. So I think that's really important. I think people really underplay the importance of the state legislature. The state legislature is the one that's determining whether or not your air and water is clean. The state legislature is the one that's determining whether or not we expand Medicaid. The state legislature is the one that's passing that, is threatening LGBTQ people with things like HB2. The state legislature is probably the thing that actually impacts your life the most. So I really hope that you will come back on Sunday to hear about the state legislative maps, because those are the ones that are probably going to affect your community the most in the long run. And then as far as a state house map, I do not think that there has been one formally submitted yet. To be fair, it's been a couple hours since I checked the page where they upload those, but to my knowledge, there has been no state house map submitted at this point. We're hoping that we'll get one tomorrow so we can talk about it with you on Sunday. It seems like it would be really bad for them to not have a house map before the actual hearings where you're supposed to comment on maps. But again, this is North Carolina. So anyway, those are the maps that we have, and we're going to focus on the maps that are the congressional maps that have been drawn by the committee chairs, because that's what we have had the most time to analyze and what we think is going to be most relevant as far as congressional maps. Right. So what's going on with these maps? The maps we've seen from the committee leadership and the maps that we think are most likely to pass have a number of problematic elements. So one thing all of the maps do is break up and dilute the voices of diverse populous urban areas and communities of interest. So they all do that. They all go into urban counties and split them up in ways that are unnecessary. They ignore public testimony. I mentioned earlier, we got a lot of public testimony about things people wanted, particularly in the Sandhills and in the Triad. These maps do not reflect that public testimony at all. They did not take it into account. It is clear that they did not take it into account. The maps also, we believe, are manipulated for partisan advantage. North Carolina is a 50-50 state. We all know this. All statewide elections here are usually pretty close. And the maps do not reflect the state that we have. And also the maps are drawn to favor politicians over people. So one thing I'll say, I'll give you a very, very specific example of that in a minute. But one thing I will say is that they did use incumbent addresses to draw these maps. And so, it's quite possible that in certain cases they are protecting incumbents. It's quite possible in certain cases they are targeting incumbents. It's just, we know that they are using those addresses regardless. I'm not sure for sure how they're using them. But they are definitely making those kinds of decisions. And I know that we heard from a lot of people at the hearings that they don't want incumbent addresses used because they, like we believe, that using incumbent addresses bakes in gerrymandering that already exists. All right, so let's give you some examples. Maps that dilute the votes of large urban areas. So here we're looking at Mecklenburg, which is where Charlotte is. All of the congressional maps that we've seen submitted by committee chairs split Mecklenburg into at least 3 different districts. This one splits Mecklenburg into 4 different districts. And so, and this makes it so that all of the different parts of Mecklenburg that are split up are being paired with areas that are much more rural. So as you can see, there's sort of like that reddish district there. That's going out all the way to like at least Polk County. It goes all the way out there. So it's taking part of Charlotte and putting it with Polk County. That northern part of Mecklenburg is taking northern Mecklenburg and putting it with Iredell and Catawba and Lincoln. The purple one is from taking part of Charlotte and putting it with Davidson County, which is much closer to the Triad. And then the green part is taking the center right out of the middle of Charlotte and pairing it with going all the way to Richmond County and part of Moore. So as you can see, they're basically like, that dilutes the votes of people in Charlotte. You know, people in Charlotte like are not going to have their voices heard because they are going to be diluted by all of these votes. They're being broken up, and their votes are going to be diluted by being put in districts with people who have very different interests from theirs. Charlotte is it's our largest urban area. And it probably has very, very different interests from people who live in Richmond County, from people who live in Polk County, from people who live in Davidson County. But they are instead basically chopping up Mecklenburg in order to dilute the votes from Mecklenburg and give more influence to these rural areas.
Like, I just want to clarify that these are congressional maps that we're looking at right now. We are going to focus tonight on the congressional maps because those are the maps that we've had a chance to analyze. We will dig deeper into the Senate and House maps at the event on Sunday.
Yeah. And so Wake County is another area that is split into 3 different districts in all of the maps. That is not necessary under Wake's population. Wake County does need to be split, but it only needs to be split once, so into 2 different districts. But all of these maps split Wake County into 3 different districts. And I will show you in a second where some of these districts end up because it is wild. And so you see, anyway, they're unnecessarily, again, splitting up an urban county in order to reduce its influence. The same thing is happening in the triad. This is one example from one of the maps, but in all of the maps, the votes of the triad are being cut up and paired with more rural areas, or even if their county is kept whole, it's paired with a large number of rural areas. And so again, is going to be overwhelmed. So people in the triad who consider themselves sort of part of a large regional community, you know, Winston-Salem's going in one district, Greensboro's going in another district, High Point is going in a third district. So they are being completely broken up. And, you know, that's not what people there asked for. People there asked for those 3 cities to be kept together in a single congressional district like they are right now, and which people there like. And so, you know, you can see basically this kind of the triad area is just being chopped into complete pieces to, you know, and that severs that community and is trying to basically reduce the influence of the voters there. This is also I have New Hanover. This is one of the maps. One of the maps does split New Hanover. It does this really weird thing. I don't know if that's like around the, you know, Wilmington city lines or not, but I don't, and that district kind of goes up north into more rural coastal areas. I don't know if people from Wilmington, from New Hanover County would want that, but like my instinct tells me that they wouldn't want that. And so this is sort of the corollary to that Wake County map. So Wake County is split up, and you can see that yellow southern part of Wake County is paired with a district that goes all the way to Davidson, takes in part of Guilford, has Randolph County in there, Lee County in there, Chatham County in there, but it's going further west outside of like where the, you know, what people consider the triangle. And just picking and choosing and gathering up all kinds of disparate areas that don't have stuff in common and that no one asked for. I don't believe that anyone in Southern Wake asked to be put in a district with Davidson County. That doesn't make sense. You know, I don't think anyone asked for that. I don't think anyone wants that. I mean, okay, the legislators want that because it like works out for them personally, but the people who actually live in these areas, I don't believe want a district that looks like this. It's clearly being done to dilute their influence. And so this is just not respecting people's actual communities and where they actually live. This is another super crazy district from another map. So another congressional map we have takes part of Southern Wake and pairs it with Onslow County. Onslow County is where like North Topsail Beach is. Do people in Southern Wake have a lot in common with the people who live in North Topsail Beach? Like, I don't think that's what they would have wanted. I think that they would want to be, you know, with communities that are more similar to theirs, like people in Southern Wake might want to be paired with other people from the Triangle area. I think that people who in Onslow County probably want to be paired with other people who are from the coast. But this is what's happening because it serves the political interests of the people who are drawing the maps. And then ignoring public testimony. None of the maps that we've seen create a Sandhills district. That was something that people at the hearings asked for repeatedly. Over half of the people who came to the Sandhills locations asked for a Sandhills district that was centered with Cumberland, Robeson, Moore, and Hope counties together. Every single map splits up the Sandhills. So you can see, you know, they're basically cutting part of Fayetteville out and pairing it, you know, with like Stanley County. There's part of Moore that I'm from is in that green area, and it's being, you know, paired again with like Union County. And then the other half of Cumberland is being put into a district that actually goes all the way down to New Hanover, I believe. And so they're just, you know, they're not respecting what people asked for. People asked for a Sandhills district. None of these maps have a Sandhills district along the lines of what people asked for. And then manipulating maps for partisan advantage. Who is surprised, right? North Carolina, like I said, is a 50-50 state. All of the maps we've seen and all of the, you know, the analysis that we've done shows that the proposed congressional maps, the maps that have been proposed by committee chairs, create either 9, 10, or even 12 Republican seats out of the 14 available. You know, I mean, I don't think that you can attribute 12 Republican seats to political geography or people just living in different places or Democrats just living in the wrong places. That seems like it doesn't have anything to do with where people live, because it's coming from a map like this, which is pairing totally disparate people, because those people who are living in Southern Wake are being paired in the district with people who are living at a beach. You know, I don't think that's political geography. All right. And then favoring politicians over people. So all of the maps that we have seen, you know, let me preface it by saying North Carolina has grown a lot in the past 10 years. Because we've grown so much, we've got a 14th congressional district. And that 14th congressional district, we think it would make sense for it to go in the place where there has been the highest population growth. The highest population growth has been in the Triangle area, sort of in the suburbs around Raleigh in particular. And so we think it would make sense for there to be a new district there. All of the maps that we've seen from committee chairs put the new district centered around Cleveland County. Cleveland County actually lost population in the past census. But you know who lives in Cleveland County? House Speaker Tim Moore lives in Cleveland County. And apparently, and it's rumored that he is interested in running for Congress. So the committee chairs have very politely drawn him a congressional seat just for his own self. And they've taken that new seat and put it here, instead of putting it in the place where the population growth has actually happened. And so, you know, they're putting the political interest of a particular politician over the interests of actual ordinary people who they are supposed to be serving. All right, so I've gone through some of the characteristics of the maps. We do have more maps to share with you so you can look at your particular area. And we are going to do breakout rooms by region so that people can kind of discuss their area together and maybe come up with some thoughts. Bree, I think you're on mute.
Okay, so I'm gonna, well, first I'm gonna drop a link in the chat, and I wanna just lift up one more question, like to talk about a little bit. Tyler brought up a great point. We do have maps that are drawn by Democrats. You know, they've scored much better on some of the nonpartisan scoring. They are the maps that have been drawn by Senator Clark are 7 maps, which a lot of folks feel would be much fairer. We're not going to spend time looking at those tonight because we want to spend our time looking at and analyzing the maps that frankly we think are actually likely to get a vote, and those are the maps drawn by Republicans. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Leica?
No, I think that's right. And I would also say that one thing that we would sort of recommend for when you're making an effective comment is to focus on those same maps that we've talked about here tonight, because like Bree said, you know, if a map is being drawn by the chair of the committee, it is much more likely to get a vote than a map from someone else who's not a chair of the committee and in the opposite party, in the minority party. That's just the truth. That's how the legislature works. And so we would want you to focus first on responding to the maps that, you know, we think are actually likely to get a vote. You know, I think that if there is another map that you think is better and you have time and space to talk about that, I would say go for it. You know, you should do the thing that calls to you. But I would say that if you want to talk about, you know, how these maps that we think are likely to actually pass affect your community, and we hope you are, that you should focus on that first. And maybe if you want to advocate for a different map, you do that in like in a submitted online comment or something, rather than using what time you have if you come in person to testify.
Leica, can you go to the next slide and we'll introduce the breakouts this way? Okay, so y'all, there's a lot of people here. Leica, do you want to address Sandra's question in the chat? Would it be useful to have an alternative in mind? I think that's a good question because I think a lot of people are probably wondering that.
Yeah, so it's good that there are alternatives that exist that show that there is a different possibility. So, you know, the fact that, say, other legislators are drawing maps that are better is a good thing. In terms of sort of public input, it doesn't quite, you know, I think that like the critique of the maps that are likely to pass is more important, more effective over the long term than supporting a good map, to be honest, a good map that's not going to be passed. Like I said, if you want to talk about it, of course you can. But in terms of just like effectiveness, focusing on the problems with the maps that are likely to pass is probably a better strategy. And the truth is that those maps exist, right? So, you know, those maps that have been drawn that people think are that, like, you know, Princeton Gerrymandering Project has analyzed to be fairer, those exist and the legislator's done that. That's actually like the biggest part of the work, I guess. So is that map exists, that they've done that. And so that's why sort of it's more important to talk about the maps that are actually could pass than a map that is pretty much definitely not going to pass, because you know, your commentary is just more important there. I hope that made sense.
Cool. Thank you for clarifying that, Leica. So we do want to let y'all have some time to talk with each other, especially people who are in your own region. I'm going to open the breakout rooms, and I dropped links, and we will drop the links again in the chat to, there's a document of that you can use to look at all that. Maybe while I'm talking, Leica, can you pull that, find that the map, drop it again, the map document. And we'll also drop another link to we have a document that goes over kind of the big picture, like talking points that we sort of have been talking about what's wrong with these draft maps. We want y'all to go into I'm going to open the breakout rooms. We want you to select the breakout room for your region, and then open up that doc and look at the maps together and talk about, you know, what are the issues? What are the things that you could bring up in a public comment, and talk sort of specifically, talk about where you live, talk specifically about how your neighborhood or your city or your region or your community would be impacted by the maps. We're going to give 10 minutes for this, and then we'll come back together. We would love it if you can identify, if you could just like someone could offer to be a note taker, and then we can share out what folks lifted up from their looking at the maps of their region. Again, these are congressional maps that we're focusing on today. We will look at the Senate and House maps on Sunday. So I'm going to open the rooms. Y'all can join, I think. Let me know if you don't see an option to join. And go ahead and take yourself into the room that makes sense to you. I think all of Eastern North Carolina is in a room. So if you're in the Outer Banks or Eastern, like Northeastern, Southeastern North Carolina or Wilmington, that's one room, which I know is a big area, but it's kind of just based on numbers. Sandhills is Eastern North Carolina. Thank you, Gary. If you want to get in a new room, I think I can add another room if there's enough folks, but it looked like we had a couple people from the Sandhills. So just go around and talk about the maps. Triad.
I actually joined the breakout room.
You're not seeing them?
No,
Okay.
I don't see
And I'm
them,
going to
Bree.
assign you to the Triad. If folks don't see where to join, put in the chat which room you want to go to. The options are Mountains, Piedmont Triad, Triangle, Eastern North Carolina, or Charlotte Metro. Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay. We got lots of people. All right. Working on it now, y'all. Working on it now.
I don't know if the screen sharing is covering up whatever options we ought to have. I don't know.
Bree, should I exit out of screen sharing? You think that might help people?
Exit out of what? Screen share. That might help people. Yeah. Good
Sure.
idea. Does that help people?
Not so far. Not so far. I'm still
All right,
not.
well, I'm just going, oh, John, I'll add you, John. I'll put you in Charlotte Metro.
Okay.
You should have an invite now.
I
Oh, also make sure that you are sending the message either directly to Bree or to everyone. If you have been like chatting with someone else in the chat or sending them a direct message, obviously we can't see that.
I wanted to be in mountains, but I don't see how to do that.
Is that Karen?
Yep.
Okay, I'll put you in mountains.
Thank you, Bree.
Hi, this is Jean. I also want mountains too.
Jean, hey, Jean.
Hi, Bree.
Sorry, Isabel, I see you. Lika, do you want to go pop around the different rooms and like,
Yeah, sure. I need to figure out how to do that. I forget.
I think if you go to
Oh,
breakout,
here I see.
Folks, if you're still here, will you, and you're waiting on something, if you're waiting for me to put you in a room, can you message me again? I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep up. I can't hear you, so if you're, triangle. Just waiting for triangle. Thank y'all, thank you, thank you. Yvette Winston is triad. Hey, Maureen, where do you want to go? Where are you from, Maureen? I can't hear you if you're talking, Maureen. I'm sorry. I got to fix my audio. If you can put in the chat where you live, I will assign you. And Madeline, you too. If you can put in the chat where you want to go, I will make sure you get to the right place. Okay, Madeline, you should be invited now. Do you see an invite? There you go. And patience. I think I'm going to give people 2 more minutes. Okay, cool. Yeah. Another 5 minutes, 7 minutes?
People are really getting into it. I think maybe we should ask them over chat if how much time they want, because like I feel like I was just in the triad and people had just started taking notes. I think you're on mute, but
I fixed my audio so I can actually hear now. I don't know how to,
can you message them? Can you just?
I can message them, but I don't know how they can write me back.
Oh, that's true. Okay. Well, I'll go to another room and see how they're doing.
Which room were you just in?
I was just in triad.
Which one have you not been to yet?
I haven't been to Charlotte, Eastern NC, or Triangle yet. I've only
All
done
right. Why don't you go to, which one are you going to?
Charlotte.
All right, I'll go to Triangle
Okay.
and see how they're doing.
Okay, sounds good. Okay.
Welcome, Nancy. We are in breakout rooms looking at maps. If you want to unmute or put in the chat where you're from, I can add you to the appropriate breakout room where you're welcome to hang out here. We should be in breakouts for just about 5 more minutes.
I have to go eat dinner. but I somehow couldn't leave the meeting. So great
Thank
meeting.
you so much for being here.
Great
Um,
meeting. We'll see you on Sunday.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Thanks, ladies.
Bye.
Thank you. I'm gonna just tell people we're gonna close the rooms in 1 minute.
Okay.
Nobody's gonna come back. Everybody's gonna be deep in conversation. I think we have one more slide with just like to go over kind of the tips. Do you want to talk about just what we think we want, what the best practices are for the comments themselves?
Yeah,
after-
I think I can do that.
Okay. I don't know if you want to share the screen again or let's let people come back and we'll have a conversation. Here's
Yeah.
some, okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Looks like some folks are coming back. Welcome. I wonder if I've got it set up to close, to have a timer on the close. We haven't really done breakout rooms in this.
Yeah, not really.
Before. Had a lot of people join after the poll, so. I guess people are gonna get okay. Okay, well, it says the participants have 60 seconds to leave their breakout rooms. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. I'd love to hear how, what y'all talked about, how that was for folks. Maybe folks, if you want to put in the comment, if there were any, top lines, any notes that you took, or any questions that came up, or let's do the raise hand if you want to unmute and talk, just so that or put stack in the chat. Actually, let's do the raise hand, and then we'll look through the chat and try to call on people to unmute and share out. We're still getting people back though, so I know that the comments were. I know the discussions were really robust, and that's awesome. I know that it's a lot to look at.
I just want to say, if you do want to speak, raise hand is under reactions. There's like a button. If you click on reactions, there's a button that says raise hand. So if you want to speak. All right, Karen, I am going to. Okay.
I'll go.
So you got yourself.
All right, so for the Wake people, Wake should be split only once, not twice. We feel like we should have the new congressional district given our explosive population. We don't understand why Cary, Morrisville, and Apex are packed in with Durham and other counties, and why those three municipalities are cracked apart from our neighboring Wake communities of Holly Springs and the South. Holly Springs is very much packed in with rural areas, diminishing their voice. Northern Chatham is becoming more urban-like, and there should be consideration given to grouping it with less rural areas. Durham's, we feel like the Black population is losing a voice because it's being grouped together with Chatham, which has a much more overwhelmingly white population. Pieces of the triangle are split off and paired with other areas rather than keeping them together in a single district. And one of our members is going to try to get some stats from an expert without any that we can use without any attribution, so as to not out that person on how likely it would be that if you were following good practices for balanced maps, that this would be the end result.
Awesome. That was so thorough. I'm so impressed by everyone, honestly, all the conversations I saw. Does someone want, I know someone put, it looks like Kathy put the notes from the Piedmont Triad in the chat, but Kathy, would you want to just kind of summarize those for people? Because that was wonderful and very detailed.
Okay, I'll put them in the chat because I'm so bad at Google Docs. That's why they're in the chat. And Tyler, if you'd like to go through those, you are welcome to do that. I mean, you had most of the comments on them, or anyone else in the group, or I'm glad to. Oh, Tyler said he can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest issue was, as we all talked about in Forsyth, to please not split up the triad, and lo and behold, every single one, both High Point, Greensboro, and Winston were all split up somehow. Typically always going out to Wilkes County and West Jefferson from the east side of Greensboro, or even in High Point. I don't know if this is a general I guess redistricting terminology, but one of the maps had what I call a corridor, just a very small slip of precincts going across from High Point to the bottom half of Forsyth, not including anything in Davidson County, and then stretching out all the way to the west again. So just not diluting, minority voters as they did with A&T a couple of years. Now they're doing the same thing with the eastern part of Guilford. Same thing with High Point. They're diluting African-American votes by pushing those down either over to the west or down into Davidson County, down into Statesville, or I should say Concord and such. One comment for Davidson County was whenever you split that county in half from the north and the south, the northern part stretches all the way down into Concord, and those have different hospital organizations, I guess, as well as educational systems. So that was a concern for one of our Davidson County folks. And yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is that in all the maps, neither High Point and Greensboro were bunched together. High Point and Forsyth wasn't bunched together. Every single time you're diluting votes by pushing out to the far west or far south. And I apologize for the dogs in the background.
Thanks, Tyler. That was fantastic. That's exactly the kind of comment that I think the legislators need to hear. It was specific about the maps. It was talking about how it impacts people directly. And Bree has asked if note takers, people who took notes, could share those notes with us. You can email her directly. Her email is in the chat if you look, because we would love to be able to send these back out to you so you all have hard copies. And all right, so I know that I don't think we've heard from Eastern North Carolina. I don't think we've heard from Charlotte yet. I don't think we've heard from the mountains yet. Does anyone else want to go? Yeah, go ahead.
From the mountains, mostly we talked about what is the new District 14, former District 11. We have among our group a former candidate for Congress, so he understands a lot of what's happening here. They are protecting some current Republican Congress people, Virginia Fox, Patrick Henry, Madison Cawthorn, of course, and the new carved out district for Tim Moore. And otherwise, the new District 14 in the mountains, in order to protect those Congress people, they've had to make District 14 more Democratic leaning. It's not all the way, but it's closer to a 50-50 district than it has been in many, many, many years. So while we are all feeling really, really bad for some of the things that are happening in other parts of the state, out here in the mountains, we're like, shh, don't tell anybody.
Well, I mean, I definitely think it makes sense to talk about aspects of the map that you do think are appropriate. Like, I know that we heard people when we were out in Western North Carolina talk about how they wanted Watauga to be in their district. Maybe not with that little carve out though.
We finally figured out it's probably a very conservative little slice, and they've put it in Virginia Fox's district. So they figured they're just adding a few extra Republican votes into her district. I think it would make the most sense if they just leave the counties alone in places like that. It's silly. Everything else is a whole county except for that little worm.
That is what it looks like.
Yeah. So we've spent a whole lot of time peering at that worm and trying to figure out if it included App State or not. And we've decided it does not. So it just taken some Republicans and put them off into a different district for Virginia Fox.
Thank you so much. That was really great too. I just want to say again how impressed I was by like all the discussions that we heard happening in these groups. I don't know if anyone from, I think the East or I think Charlotte also we haven't heard from. If anyone.
I took some notes from Charlotte. Although I welcome anybody else who's in that meeting to speak up because I'm not sure I got everything. But a couple of things came out. The first one was we really wanted to see the precinct level. And so actually we went and got additional maps. Someone had actually been to the legislature website and was able to download some more detailed maps. So we shared that link. And I guess the biggest thing that hit everybody is they're splitting up Alma's district and possibly, making it a lot tougher for her to get reelected. So looks like she has a target on her back in at least one of the maps. And, there's a lot of discussion about the splitting of the various communities of interest. It seems like that really was not a criteria at all in the drawing of these maps. And they talked about, for example, the Asian community that was being moved into being a small piece of some other, large districts so that they were not going to be represented as they formerly were. And a lot of discussion of the 9th district, which is the one that actually looks a little bit like a salamander in terms of looping over to try to grab certain groups to dilute, some voices. So those were sort of the high points. I don't know if anybody else wants to add any comments.
Thanks, John. That was a super helpful summary. One thing I do want to say, which is something I touched on a little bit before, is that particular map that splits Mecklenburg 4 ways is so egregious that it like kind of captures our attention. I think especially the people who live there. That's like sort of what we want to talk about exclusively. The only thing I want to say is that there are 2 other maps. And so, like I was saying earlier, like there are some commonalities, right? Like they all split that county more than it needs to be split. They all take part of the county and put it with rural areas. So one thing I would think about is sort of like, if it turns out that that map doesn't actually make it, has your comment kind of touched on other things that are relevant as well? That's the only thing I would say, just sort of like as maybe just to think about adding that in, because, these legislators are tricksy. They change stuff around on us all the time. And, there's nothing they would love better than for everyone's comments to be made suddenly irrelevant.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, we did talk about smoke and mirrors and the fact that by releasing the 3 maps and not giving us, any kind of idea, it would do just what you were talking about. So
Yep.
that was raised
Yep,
in
it
my
seems
group.
like a strategy.
I just want to add, Leka, I think the great point you're making there is that it's really important to make sure that every area of the state offers feedback, so that we make sure that, it's not just everyone from Charlotte Mecklenburg or everyone from the Triangle, but that there's some problem around, from everyone around the state with what's being suggested.
Yeah, definitely. And that's another thing I would really love to encourage people to come to the meeting on Sunday, because we will be going into more detail. And like I said, we'll be looking at the state legislative maps, and we will be looking at more detail in some of the places that we just felt like we couldn't get to today because of time constraints.
It's almost like there's so many things you could comment on. I mean, you get diluted right there.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll talk about something different.
One thing I would say is that if you come in person to have a comment, there's a time limit. There's a 2-minute time limit. At least that's been so far in our experience. But that doesn't prevent you from also submitting comments online. You can submit as many comments online as you want. You can come in person and submit a comment online. You can probably come to more than one in-person hearing if you really want to. So like, I think that if you're giving an in-person comment, you have to keep yourself within those 2 minutes, but if you have a lot more to say, you should submit it as an online comment.
Yeah, good point. Are you able to sign up and request to speak at any of these meetings yet? I haven't gone on to the legislature like a month.
Yeah, we have the sign up links now, I believe. Bree, I don't know if you have a better idea of those.
Yeah, I dropped them in the chat, and I will also definitely include them in the follow-up email.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, or share the chat. I haven't been able to take notes, listen, follow on the chat.
I could probably share the chat, and then that way people could, yeah, I'll see if I can include the chat in the follow-up email. Sometimes I can't attach
Depending on your
things.
Settings, sometimes.
But Leka, do you want to? I'll answer some questions while you do this. But do you want to share your screen again? And we just have one more slide to kind of some things to think about in terms of preparing your comments. And I do want to say that the comments are really, really important. I know I'm getting some private messages from folks that they're just so mad about these maps, and they don't even want to make comments. They just want to go straight to fighting them in court. But this is the process, and we have to make comments on the maps. We have to do that. So
the other thing I want to say is that in the past, when there has been litigation, they have used the public record, including what comes up in public comments in that litigation. So if there's
absolutely, that's what I was going to say. In Georgia and Atlanta, we use those public comments if we in fact have to litigate.
Mm-hmm. Do they also use the online comments, or is it just the in-person?
Anything that's in the public record is as fair game as far as I know. And so those online comments are in the public record as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So for the people who personally are, waiting for something like that to happen, that actually giving a public comment is also helping.
I have one quick question, which is, are these hearings going to be for both the congressional maps and the North Carolina legislative maps?
I believe they're going to be considered to be for all of them, yes. And so, obviously, when you have only 2 minutes, that makes it really difficult, because I think a lot of us are going to want to talk about all the state legislative stuff as well, which we'll try to go over on Sunday. And so I think you're just going to have to kind of pick which one you want to go with, or try to fit in a bunch of stuff in 2 minutes. And that's why I was saying it makes sense to maybe submit an online comment as well. All right, so let's go through just, preparing for your comment. And we've talked about this already, but again, as far as we know, it's going to be the same 2 minutes that, people have gotten at the past hearings. And so what I would tell you is that, go ahead and try to write your comment ahead of time. If you are able to, try to time yourself doing your comments so you can make sure that you can get everything in and not get cut off. They do kind of, they're sort of like a little bit gentle about cutting people off, but there is a time limit and there's someone there who will tell you to stop. And so, and also I know roughly 300 words for me is 2 minutes. And so I would assume most people are probably in there somewhere, just as a guideline. Again, if you have a longer comment submitted online, I would actually encourage people to submit comments online as well, because you can go into a little bit more detail. Try to be clear about what map you're commenting on. I know it's really hard because they've released multiple maps. The document we gave you that has those images of those maps, it should say at the top of every image which map it comes from, so that you can be sure to reference the right one. And it really does help to be specific because, well, like I said, all those maps do share negative characteristics. They are all a little bit different. Again, another way to handle this is to focus on the characteristics that all of the maps share. That's often helpful. But, be as specific as you can when, as long as you're making sure that you know which map you're referring to. And I think the last thing to think about is, one thing that I definitely heard in all those breakout rooms are people who are talking about how these maps impact their communities from what they know because they live there. And that is exactly what we were looking for. We were looking for people who live in the area and know what these maps are going to do to that area and can speak to that. That is really what makes a comment effective. So, speaking from the heart and talking about your own community for sure. Bree, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, I mean, I think the same thing, what you just said, and I will include this in the follow-up email and drop the link now, but we do have a worksheet that kind of goes through sort of effective public comments. We've also had some comments to talking about other resources for that. I did want to lift up that a couple people, and there's also a hand raised. I don't know if I saw a hand raised and maybe it went down. Karen, let me just say one thing and then I'd love to hear what you wanted to say. But I think Tyler said in the chat that Monday was for congressional and Tuesday was for legislative comments. I have not seen that. We will investigate that and try to get clarity on that. And then also, Anne said that when she signed up to speak at the virtual hearing at 5:30 on Monday, she was confirmed, but that it said there was a maximum of 30 people who would be allowed to speak. So that's interesting.
30 people.
30 people.
30 people for 2 minutes?
Yeah. So another thing that we have discussed and would love to have feedback on, and we would love for y'all, we've already said this, when you write your comment, definitely submit it online and send it to us. Another thing that we have talked about with All on the Line is to have folks who are local here in Raleigh come to the in-person hearing and read comments from people who couldn't make the trip. So if you have a comment that you are going to submit online and you would be comfortable letting someone else read it on your behalf and of course give you the credit, let us know that. Send it to us and let us know that, and we will try to find someone who can read it and say this is from so-and-so person in this other place who couldn't make it here because these hearings are not accessible. That's what I would say. And Karen, I saw your hand first. Do you want to unmute Karen Smith?
Karen, if you're talking, we can't hear you. I think you're still muted.
Thank you, Tyler, for dropping that link.
All right. Who's the other person with their hand raised? John,
Lingle.
go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'm sitting here thinking, we need a lawyer in one of these, you know, a lawyer who's brought suits on districting maps, who says, you know, these are the kind of comments we're looking for when we start putting our case together. I mean, I don't think the Republicans are going to listen to anything about your community. I mean, they're just not interested in that, and they've shown no evidence of doing that. So it's like, in my mind, all we're doing is writing comments for the lawyers. So I feel we need a lawyer to say, look, this is the kind of comment that I'm looking for when I bring a case up. So make some comments like this. Is there any possibility of getting that?
We have a lawyer, John. Lake is one.
Okay.
So I have not litigated a redistricting case, but I think what I will say is that in the past cases that we've seen where public input has been used, like the one that I can think of in particular that I know because I know it well because I was following it closely, the Covington case, which was a racial gerrymander case, they basically took comments from people who are from the areas and said, you know, these maps don't represent our communities. These maps, you know, are, you know, we feel like our communities are being like intentionally packed. You know, so basically the same things that we were talking about are the kinds of comments that have shown up in litigation in the past, are these sort of geographically specific comments that talk about what a particular map does to the community. Those are the kinds of things that we've seen show up in the past. And I'm assuming those are the kinds of things that would be used in any future litigation.
Although the theme there is racial. So I'm thinking, you know, I'm an old white guy. I can't go out and say these maps.
No, but I mean, what
I
I meant to say, what I was trying to say that is like the thing that was relevant there is, yes, it was a racial gerrymandering case. But the reason that those comments were useful is because people are saying, this is my community, this is where I live, this is why this district does not represent, you know, me. And that is sort of being that kind of specific about like, what is your community, where do you live, why is this district not right?
Yeah, although I keep wondering if the racial issue isn't there.
Well, I mean, I think that people from Black communities are going to speak on that, so.
Right, but that doesn't tell me how to do my comment unless I can show, I guess I could look at that part of Davidson that has a Black community and try to say what it would do to them.
Well, I think that also, you know, you can talk about what the maps are going to do to you. So, you know, you can, if you look at these congressional maps and you don't see a problem with them for you, we're also going to have state legislative maps. There will probably be something in there that you might want to talk about. And then again, and then also, like, honestly, you know, if you really feel like you don't have anything geographically specific to say about your community, because we really do think that comments should come from the people who live in a particular community, then, you know, we could, if you wanted to come testify in person, we could give you the testimony of someone else who isn't able to attend. And that way you can actually really serve their purpose.
Yeah, I just want to make sure whatever is in my comment would be something that would be helpful to a lawyer, and it isn't just about.
Yeah, I'm not gonna litigate any redistricting cases. I'm just gonna follow them, so I can only give you the advice that I know of.
Okay, thanks.
All right, any other questions we need to take, Bree?
Well, let's see. I'm still trying to see if Karen, if Karen was able to, she said that she couldn't unmute for some reason, like we had blocked her from unmuting, but I can't figure out where we've done that. So not sure. Yes, I will include all the links that we referenced in the follow-up email. I'll try to include everything that was dropped in the chat as well. Yvette has her hand up. Thank you. Yvette, can you unmute?
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't know if it was said, it probably was, but I just wanted to point out that when individuals are making their statements, whether it's over the phone and recorded or in person, they should always lead with their name and what district they live in. Make that very plain. Also, I advise people in Georgia and in areas, in the area where I work, where I live, not to include, especially if it's a recorded message, not to include the telephone number, because that is then heard and is out there. You just give them your name and where you live, maybe your address. They will be able to look up the information. The other thing I wanted to ask was, not knowing the protocol in North Carolina specifically, but trying to organize people to get involved. Are you able to, if you are not using your 2-minute max, are you able to give some of your time to another speaker? Do they let you give proxy to someone else?
I don't believe so. I don't think that they will let you do that, unfortunately.
Okay.
All right, any more questions? I know some people are people are starting to hop off because this meeting has definitely gone long.
Way over,
But we're happy to answer questions if people still have them.
I think you want to go to the next slide, and we'll just make sure that we're very explicit about the next steps that we are asking folks to take away from this meeting. Sit down and start trying to draft your comment. If you are planning to come, or if you're able to come on Sunday, that will be an opportunity to continue thinking through your comment and maybe even workshopping it in that space. But go ahead and draft your comment. We would really appreciate it if you would send your comments to us as well as submitting them online, and then making your plan to testify if you're able to go in person, or to either Raleigh or to one of the remote locations, or sign up and testify on the virtual hearing. But draft your comment. That's the most important thing. Reach out to us if you have any help, if you need any help or have questions. Submit it online, send us a copy, make your plan to testify, and please join us on Sunday for it's a rapid response training we'll be doing similar to what we did tonight. We will also at that time be looking at the House and the Senate maps. It's super important that folks comment on those legislative maps as well as the congressional maps. I think the congressional maps are going to get a lot more attention. And so, if you're here with us tonight, and you are in a position to comment on those Senate and House maps, and that's going to be really important. And also please spread the word. If you have people like on your list, if you're part of an organization, and you can share the link to that training on Sunday, and let people know how important this is, and that it's not super hard, or anybody can submit a comment online. The portal is already open, so you can submit comments online starting now. We don't know how long it will be open. I would not be surprised, correct me if I'm wrong, if they close it after Tuesday.
We just have no idea.
We just don't know. So that's it. So please share that training on Sunday, and that will be an opportunity, I think, for folks who to get comfortable and prepared to make a comment. This is the same public comment portal that has been open the whole time. I think that's everything. Let's see. We will send out that email. I will try to get it out tonight. We do have some updates to make to it, and sometimes my email thing is a little funky. So if it doesn't go out tonight, it'll go out first thing in the morning. But you will get the email with all the links and all the information that we shared tonight. And thank you all so much for being here, for your time.
One question, please.
Yeah.
Do we have the updated one for Pitt County?
I'm sorry, Brenda, can you say that again?
Did you say the map had not been updated for Pitt County?
So there is a Pitt County map for one of the congressional maps in there, but not all of them. And so we're going to try to update that with those. The one that is in there is the one that splits Pitt County, so you can see where the split is in that congressional map. And we'll try to update it with the other congressional maps. I think it's being kept whole in the other congressional maps we talked about.
Yeah.
So does it appears that with the public hearings that everyone attended, that these maps were drawn in opposition to what the people heard? That's what it sounds like to me.
I mean, if not in opposition, certainly without any reference to.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you all for sticking with us. We have gone like almost 40 minutes over time. So we're glad that you're all here and you're all so dedicated. Please come on Sunday if you can. Again, those state ledge maps are so important. They really impact your life probably more than congressional maps do. And so hopefully we will see you all then. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Good evening.
Bye.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks.
Good night. Thanks, Tyler.